Hello, my name is Annalisa Maria. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have another video for you in my series Album of the Month, where I recommend an album each month, hypothetically, that I really enjoy and that I think maybe not that many people have heard of, or maybe more people should have heard of, / haven't really heard anyone else talk about that much. So today's album that I picked out is one that I actually just heard super recently, so totally different from what I did last month, which was an album I've been listening to for a really long time. But I thought this album really stood out from the other albums I've highlighted so far, and I really enjoyed it, and it just seemed to fit the theme really well. So today I'm very excited to discuss with you the album Ojos Del Sol by the band Bamba. So the band Bamba I'm super new to. I am half Mexican, so I did grow up around a lot of like Mexican music and like folk music and like ranchero and stuff like that, which I actually resented quite a bit for quite a long time. But I've grown to appreciate it, and also just other types of traditional music other than ranchero, but you know. Anyways, my point is, Bamba is a very new band to me, but I really like them, and part of what appeals to me is that the main artist behind the band, who's basically like the driving force, all the other like members have kind of switched out. It's like her project. Her name is Luz Elena Mendoza, and she is from Portland, Oregon, but she is a child of Mexican immigrants, and a lot of the themes, I guess, of the Mexican culture, as well as just like stylistically inspired, it's very strongly present in this album and the band as a whole. Their name, Bamba, is a call out to like the super influential Mexican folk song La Bamba, which was obviously popularized around the world by Richie Valens and etc. So part of that aspect feels like really unique to me. So anyway, the band Bamba, it's super interesting sound. I haven't listened to really any of their other stuff, so I can't really speak on their overall sound. I did do a little bit of reading about them, and it seems like they've gone on a little bit of a journey, but they've stayed true to sort of like the combo that they hammered out in this album, which I think was probably, it seems like from my minimal research, is the album that sort of brought them to the level of success that they currently are at. So by this album alone, Ojos Del Sol, Bamba kind of gives me like Animal Collective meets Natalia Lafourcade meets Sufjan Stevens. And I also did see them on a playlist on Apple Music titled Inspired by Elliott Smith. So take that how you will. I feel like there's a lot of different artists you could compare them to in terms of influences and similarities and stuff, but the way that they combined it all is just really unique, and I'm in love with it. The cadence that a lot of the vocal melody is in, and like just the way it's delivered, also reminds me particularly of Fiona Apple's sort of very unique style of vocal melodies and lyricism additionally, and also kind of Mitski, which have been compared, you know, to each other, but I feel like both of them are worth a mention in terms of the vibes that the vocals of this album gives off to me, which I'm a huge fan of both of those artists, so good sign in my book. There's also a little bit of sort of like a psychedelic experimental pop sort of feel, similar to, and if you've ever heard of like the band Melody's Echo Chamber, which I think is like the solo project of like the ex-wife of Tame Impala, or maybe still current wife, I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about her, but I like her music. Anyway, the genres that this album hits on is quite numerous, but definitely solidly includes indie folk / like kind of singer-songwriter, but also you could say experimental rock, definitely psychedelic pop, bedroom pop vibes, I guess, and then definitely you can't deny there is significant influence from like traditional Mexican folk music style. There's lyrics in both English and Spanish. It's mostly an English album, but there's a couple songs in Spanish, and I think a couple songs that have both. And again, the band, which is basically all revolves around the main artist, Luz, is from Portland, Oregon, which is the city I was born in, and I live in Oregon, so also a point from me. A few things I just really love about this album that are worth shouting out, I think are unique traits to it is, number one, the cultural blend of the sound. The melodies are heavily influenced by the main artist's heritage and roots. And with its mix of English and Spanish, like, it really encapsulates, and I've read that this was very intentional of her, encapsulates like the dual-sidedness of her Mexican-American identity. And I've heard her say in some interviews some quote about kind of it being about, like, in general, a lot of her work surrounding the reality of being 100% Mexican and also 100% American, and then also simultaneously not really being considered either by either, which, you know, is a very, very common qualm slash eternal woe of Mexican American people. I think whether you're fully like Mexican racially or whether you're mixed, I think that, like, if you're have Mexican heritage but you live in America, or you're part American, or you're part white, or you grew up in America, there's just like that concept is like, I've just never met a Mexican American who didn't struggle with that, I guess. So I appreciate that being talked about. This album also is largely about Luz's spiritual journey. It explores themes of healing, self-reflection, and spiritual growth. She said that the album came to her during a period of intense personal transformation, and it sort of touches on her journey of reconciling her cultural identity with her current spiritual path. That's also like a super relevant subject to me, I feel like, and to a lot of people that may resonate with this album, and it just does it so in such a beautiful way. And I feel like even if you don't understand or listen to all of the lyrics, just the melodies themselves and the style of the instruments and the layering of all of the vocals and instruments together in this very dreamlike way just feels inherently spiritual, and I really appreciate that. There's also a really big influence of nature in this album, both lyrically and sonically. Luz has spoken about being inspired by the landscapes around her, which kind of explains like the earthy atmosphere, and related to the album's title, Ojos Del Sol, which is a nod to her connection with the natural world and the idea of seeing life with like clearer, more awakened eyes, which Ojos Del Sol means eyes of the sun. The last thing I want to mention before we wrap up my little album of the month review, not really review, but recommendation, I guess, is a few songs specifically I want to shout out. Obviously, if I'm recommending these albums on album of the month, I try really hard to make sure I really like all the songs, and there's not really any like skips per se. That's kind of my like criteria for putting it on this series. But I also like to just shout out a few in particular, like if you don't have time to listen to the whole album and you just want to get started, some that really stood out to me. First of all, the title track, Ojos Del Sol, which is obviously also the title of the album, is just extremely beautiful. It's just like haunting almost, the harmonies and the melody itself. It is definitely leans more into like, I feel like northern Mexican like folk singing and stuff, and definitely is highly reminiscent of Natalia Lafourcade, so if you like that artist, I would definitely check out this song. But it also definitely is different in its own way, and it brings a really unique element that I think is just built on throughout the rest of the album, but it's just perfect to open the album. It's a stunning song. It's like enchanting to listen to, which I'll probably say that multiple times, maybe about multiple songs, but the whole album is kind of enchanting. So Ojos Del Sol, which bleeds into the song Say Sun, which is kind of like a transitionary song, but gotta love it when an album does like the perfect transition, bleeds into the next songs. That's just so satisfying. The next song I wanted to mention is the song Libre, which actually I think has I think it has mostly English lyrics, but it switches to Spanish maybe halfway through. But anyway, it's got this really interesting like chanting choir of like female voices, which I believe I read was like a local female choir group that worked on her with a couple of songs on the album. But there's some really interesting references in the lyrics to just like transformation and freedom, and also a mention of a Mexican like shapeshifter, El Nagual, like spiritual. Also I think like in Aztec and Mayan culture possibly. I'm not super informed about that, but just the references to folklore and stuff in context with the theme of the song I thought was really fascinating. The last song I'll mention is the song Cara Cara, which I just noticed that all of the songs I mentioned have Spanish names, which is really like so super by chance, because like all the other songs I think don't. Maybe there's one other song with a Spanish name, but anyway, like if you're like, I'm scared of songs that are all in Spanish, please don't be turned off. There's also songs in English. I don't know how it ended up this way. Yeah, just don't question it. Anyway, Cara Cara really reminds me of Mitski, especially at the beginning, but again it kind of builds off of that vibe, and the melody once again is enchanting and mesmerizing in a way that's different from Ojos Del Sol. It feels less intricate in the way that it's like carefully constructed and like, oh, delicate and beautiful. Yeah, it's less delicate. That's a really good way to put it. It's less delicate and more like I don't want to say more heartfelt, but just maybe more passionate, or like it just feels a little more nuanced. Like there's a deeper set of emotions going on behind that song. Like maybe there's a little bit of pain behind it. The lyrics in this song specifically are really reminiscent of Fiona Apple's lyricism, kind of in general. And you guys may know I'm like the biggest Fiona stan. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of the album. Those were my 3 songs I wanted to talk about. I could probably talk about all the songs, but I didn't want the video to be too long, and each of the songs is just like brings its own unique flavors to the table in such a nuanced way. Like you kind of just have to listen to the album. But overall, I really hope you are intrigued maybe by this review and you will give it a chance. It is really just a very stunning exploration of spiritual introspection and culture, and you know, it's a very personal work, and I love personal works, like when it really feels like this person very authentically poured their history and their emotions into the work. It's a very unique feeling in the music, in the final product. And this was just a super niche find I haven't really heard anyone talk about, so super up my alley. I think I really want to listen to more of their music and learn more about the lead musician behind it all. She seems like a super awesome, interesting person, and yeah, so I'm planning to do that, but that's all I have for you today. If you've heard of them before, please tell me. If you have any recommendations to something similar, I'd also really like to know. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video as a whole. It was a good way to pass the time, or at least something interesting to listen to. And if you would like, please check out the rest of my channel. I have way more videos on a very wide range of topics and styles, so I do hope to see you again. Thank you for watching, subscribe, thank you! So I